Karen Bell parked her beat-up Honda Civic near the Pueblo Library building and froze for a moment, holding on to the steering wheel. The July heat made the air thick and still, and the city seemed both unfamiliar and familiar to her. 3 days ago, she had left Denver, leaving behind the apartment she shared with Jason, her job at a publishing company, and a life that had suddenly fallen apart after 5 years of relationship. "I need time to think," Jason had said, standing at the door with a suitcase in his hand. "I don't know who I am when we're together." Karen remembered looking at him and realizing that she didn't know who she was either. The difference was that she wanted to find out, and he just wanted to run away. The Pueblo Library was housed in an early 20th century brick building with tall windows and wooden shelves that remembered tens of thousands of stories. Karen pushed open the heavy door and felt the welcome coolness of the air conditioning. Behind the desk stood a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a bun. "You must be Karen," she smiled. "I'm Margaret Jenkins, the head librarian. Welcome to Pueblo." Karen shook her hand. "Thank you for giving me a chance. I know my move was rather sudden." "Everyone knows everyone here," Margaret said, leading her between the rows of books. "But sometimes we need some fresh faces, especially ones who understand that the library isn't just a place for books, but a community center." Pueblo wasn't the place Karen had ever imagined calling home. With a population of about 110,000, located in the Arkansas River Valley, it was known for its steel industry and working-class community. But it also had a university library, several museums, and a surprisingly diverse cultural life. Karen was looking for just that, a place where she could start over without feeling completely cut off from civilization. "Tell me about the city," she asked, as she settled into her new workplace. "Pueblo is not like Denver," Margaret warned. "People work with their hands here, and many families have lived here for generations. But there's another side to it. University students, artists, people looking for something unusual." "Unusual?" "Well, we have a pretty active community of people interested in alternative lifestyles. Yoga, meditation, various spiritual practices. Some locals say it's because of the energy of the mountains. Others think people are just looking for something more than factory work." Karen nodded. After breaking up with Jason, she herself felt the need for something more. Not religion in the traditional sense. She had grown up in a Methodist family but had long since stopped going to church. Rather, she was looking for a way to understand herself and her place in the world. Her first days at the library were uneventful. Karen studied the catalog system, got to know the regular visitors, and furnished her rented apartment on Berkeley Avenue. The building was old but cozy, with large windows and wooden floors that creaked with every step. The summer heat forced her to keep the windows open even at night, hoping to catch a breeze. On Thursday evening, as Karen was about to close the library, a woman in her 40s with chestnut hair and attentive eyes approached her. "Excuse me, are you the new librarian?" she asked. "I'm Jennifer Cole. I teach at the college." "Karen Bell," she introduced herself. "How can I help you?" "I'm looking for books on the psychology of consciousness, something about meditative practices, altered states of consciousness, for research." Karen led her to the appropriate section. "Are you studying psychology?" "Sociology, but I've always been interested in alternative approaches to self-knowledge. By the way, if you're interested, we have a group meeting tomorrow evening where we discuss similar topics. Nothing formal, just a conversation." Karen hesitated. She wasn't the type to easily get along with people, especially in a new city. But something in Jennifer's voice, her genuine interest, made her agree. "Where are you meeting?" "In the center on Union Avenue. Dr. Gray rents a small room there for group sessions. He's a psychologist, a very interesting man. We start at 7. The next evening, Karen found the building without difficulty. It was a converted Victorian house divided into several offices. The sign on the door read, "Dr. Marcus Gray, Psychological Counseling." Even at 7 in the evening, the heat had not subsided, and Karen was grateful for the coolness inside the building. Inside, she was greeted by Jennifer and several other people. A young woman in a light summer dress introduced herself as Rebecca, a social worker. A middle-aged man named Tim said he taught at a local school. There was another couple, Robert and Melanie, who ran a shop in the historic part of town. "Welcome," said the man who was obviously Dr. Gray. He looked about 45, with graying hair and piercing eyes behind horn-rimmed glasses. There was something both friendly and authoritative about his manner. "We meet here every week," he explained, settling into a chair opposite a small circle of chairs. "Not for therapy in the traditional sense, but to discuss different approaches to self-discovery. Many of us feel that modern psychology is too limited by its scientific framework." "What do you mean?" Karen asked. "Well, for example, Western science has only recently begun to study meditation, even though Eastern traditions have been using it for thousands of years. Or take shamanism. Native Americans have used certain practices for healing and self-discovery for centuries, but academic psychology ignores them." Rebecca nodded. "Dr. Gray helped me understand that my anxiety issues aren't just related to brain chemistry, but also to the fact that I've lost touch with deeper aspects of myself. Every person has access to wisdom that goes beyond ordinary consciousness," Gray continued. "But our culture teaches us to suppress that wisdom and rely solely on rational thinking." Karen listened with growing interest. After breaking up with Jason, she often felt that she had lost touch not only with him, but with herself. Rational analysis of the situation didn't help. She could understand that the relationship was unhealthy, but she couldn't figure out how to move forward. "How can I restore that connection?" she asked. "There are various methods," Gray said, and Karen noticed that he was looking directly at her. "Meditation, breathing exercises, sometimes more intense practices. It's important to find what resonates with you." The meeting lasted about 2 hours. People shared their experiences. Gray asked questions and offered different interpretations. Karen felt more understood than she had in many months in Denver. When they finished, the sun was setting, but the heat lingered. "Is this your first time in our city?" Gray asked as the others began to leave. "Yes, I moved here from Denver. I work at the library." The library is a wonderful place for someone seeking knowledge, but sometimes the most important knowledge cannot be found in books. He handed her his business card. "If you'd like to talk privately, I'm available by appointment. The first consultation is free." Karen took the card. "Thank you, I'll think about it." Stepping outside, she felt that the evening was just what she needed. Not a solution to all her problems, but the beginning of something new. For the first time in months, she felt she was moving in the right direction, not just running away from the past. At home, she placed Dr. Gray's business card on a shelf next to several psychology books she had borrowed from the library. Tomorrow she would call and make an appointment. Opening all the windows in the hope of a night breeze, Karen fell asleep with a sense of anticipation for the first time in a long time. Karen called Dr. Gray the day after the group meeting. His voice sounded warm and welcoming on the phone, and he suggested they meet on Monday evening. "Don't worry about formalities," he said. "We'll just talk about what's bothering you. Sometimes it's enough just to be heard." Dr. Gray's office on the second floor of a Victorian house was decorated in warm colors. Soft armchairs, subdued lighting, bookshelves lined with volumes on psychology and Eastern philosophy. On the walls hung diplomas, a master's degree in psychology from the University of Colorado, certificates from various courses in alternative therapies. "Tell me about yourself," Gray asked, settling into the chair opposite her. "What brought you to Pueblo?" Karen began with her breakup with Jason, but found herself saying much more. She talked about how lost she felt in the relationship, how her job at the publishing house had ceased to be fulfilling, how her parents constantly asked when she was finally going to get married. "It sounds like you were living someone else's life," Gray remarked. "Many people get stuck in roles that society imposes on them and forget their true needs." "But how do you know what those needs are?" Karen asked. "It requires a lot of soul searching. Our consciousness is like an iceberg. What we see on the surface is only a small part. The rest is hidden beneath the water." Gray said that traditional therapy often limits itself to working with symptoms without addressing the root of the problem. Your subconscious contains a lifetime of wisdom, but accessing it requires special methods. "What methods?" "Meditation, breathing exercises, sometimes more intense practices. It's important to find what works for you." He looked at her intently. "I feel that you are ready to do some serious work on yourself." Karen left the office feeling that she had finally found someone who understood her. They agreed to meet once a week, and Gray gave her several books to read at home. The next day at the library, Karen noticed a man who was spending a long time studying the esoteric section. He was of medium height, with thin features and attentive eyes. When he approached the counter with several books on shamanism, Karen decided to speak up. "Are you interested in alternative spiritual practices?" she asked. The man tensed a little. "Robert Stone," he introduced himself. "Yes, you could say I'm professionally interested. I have a shop on Abriendo Avenue." "Karen Bell. I'm new here. What kind of shop do you have?" "Esoteric goods, crystals, incense, books on spirituality." He paused. "Are you familiar with Dr. Gray?" Karen was surprised by the directness of the question. "Yes, I recently had a consultation with him. How do you know?" "It's a small town. Plus, those books." He nodded at the one on depth psychology in her hands. "He recommends them, often." "Do you know him?" Robert hesitated. "I was his patient a few years ago. He's an interesting man, but be careful with his methods. Not everything he suggests is safe." "What do you mean?" "Nothing specific. Just if something seems strange to you, trust your instincts." He picked up his books. "See you." Karen watched him leave, not understanding what Robert meant. Dr. Gray seemed professional and caring to her. Perhaps there was some personal animosity between them. Over the next few weeks, Karen attended both group meetings and individual sessions regularly. Gray introduced her to basic meditation techniques and breathing exercises. She began to feel more centered, more connected to herself. "You're making excellent progress," he said during one of the sessions in late July. "But there are deeper levels of work that can help you." "What levels?" "Working with the subconscious through guided meditation. Sometimes I use light hypnosis to help people access blocked memories or emotions." Karen was a little wary. "Hypnosis? Nothing mystical. Just deep relaxation that allows you to bypass the protective mechanisms of the conscious mind." Gray smiled. "I understand your doubts, but remember how you felt when you first came here and how you feel now." It was true. Karen felt more confident, more in touch with her needs. Her job at the library was more satisfying, and she was starting to make friends in town. "All right," she agreed. "Let's give it a try." The first hypnosis session went smoothly. Gray asked her to relax, focus on his voice, and remember her childhood. Karen saw herself as an 8-year-old girl playing in her grandmother's garden. She felt safe and loved. "That's wonderful," Gray said when she came out of the trance. "You're very susceptible to hypnosis. That means you have a strong connection to your subconscious." After the session, Karen felt peaceful but a little disoriented. She didn't remember all the details of what she had said under hypnosis, only general impressions. A few days later, she stopped by Robert Stone's shop, the Mystic Shop, located in an old building on Abriendo Avenue. The interior smelled of sandalwood and patchouli, and the shelves were lined with crystals of all sizes and colors, dream catchers and amulets. "How are things with Dr. Gray?" Robert asked, as she looked at books on meditation. "Fine. He's helping me a lot." Karen paused. "He started using hypnosis. He says it will help me understand myself better." Robert's expression changed. "Hypnosis?" "Yes. Is there something wrong with that?" Robert looked around to make sure they were alone. "Listen, I don't want to scare you, but Dr. Gray wasn't always the way he seems now." "What do you mean?" "A few years ago, he lost his license in Denver. There were allegations of unethical behavior with patients. He moved here and somehow got his license back." Karen felt something cold tighten in her stomach. "What kind of unethical behavior?" "I don't know exactly, but one of his patients committed suicide. There was an investigation, but nothing could be proven." Robert took her hand. "Just be careful, especially with hypnosis. He could use it to influence people, but he helps people." "I thought so too, until I realized what he was doing to me." Robert let go of her hand. "He convinced me that I had repressed memories of childhood trauma. Under hypnosis, I remembered things that, as I later realized, never happened." Karen was silent, trying to process what she had heard. "Maybe it will be different for you," Robert added. "But if anything seems strange, If you start to doubt your memories or feelings, please come and see me." Karen nodded and hurried out of the store. That evening, she sat in her apartment for a long time, thinking about Robert's words. Dr. Gray was really helping her. She felt better, more understanding of herself. But what if, at the next group meeting, she watched Gray closely? He was as charming and attentive as ever. But now she noticed how he looked at her, how he asked questions, how he directed the conversation. "Karen, you seem tense," he remarked. "Is something bothering you?" "No, everything's fine," she replied, but she felt he didn't believe her. After the meeting, Gray asked her to stay behind. "I sense that something is troubling you," he said. "Perhaps someone has said something to you about me?" Karen hesitated. "Robert Stone mentioned that you had some problems in Denver." Gray sighed. "Robert, I should have warned you about him." He sat down across from her. Robert was a very difficult patient. He has serious issues with paranoid thinking. When I couldn't help him, he started spreading false rumors. "What about the patient who committed suicide?" "A tragic case. The woman was suffering from severe depression, and I did everything I could to help her. But sometimes even the best efforts can't prevent tragedy." Gray looked at her with pain in his eyes. "I moved here to start over, to help people who are truly ready for change." Karen felt guilty for doubting him. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have listened to gossip." "It's okay. It's natural to ask questions, but I hope you judge people by their actions, not by rumors." Karen agreed to continue therapy. But deep down, something had changed. She began to pay closer attention to what was happening during the sessions and tried to remember more of what she said under hypnosis. In early August, the heat in Pueblo became almost unbearable. Even in the evening, the temperature did not drop below 30 degrees, and Karen often fell asleep with wet towels on her forehead. But it wasn't just the weather that made her sleep restless. After her conversation with Robert, each session with Dr. Gray left her with a growing sense of anxiety. During her last hypnosis session, something was wrong. Karen remembered relaxing to Gray's voice, sinking into a trance. But then, there was a blackout. When she woke up, 2 hours had passed instead of the usual one, and Gray said they had been working with very deep memories. "What memories?" she asked. "You talked about your father," he replied, "about how he punished you as a child. Very painful experiences." Karen frowned. Her father had never punished her physically. He was a gentleman who preferred explanations to shouting. "I don't remember talking about that." "That's normal. The mind protects us from painful memories, even when we verbalize them under hypnosis." Gray made notes in his notebook. "We'll continue working on this trauma in our next session." Karen left the office feeling that something was very wrong. At home, she called her mother. "Mom, do you remember how Dad punished me when I was little?" "Punish you?" Linda Bell sounded surprised. "Karen, your father never laid a hand on you. He couldn't even raise his voice. Why are you asking?" "Just trying to remember my childhood." "Are you okay, dear? You sound strange lately." Karen assured her mother that everything was fine, but after the conversation she felt even more confused. If she hadn't told Gray about her father's punishments, what had happened during those 2 hours? The next day, Jennifer Cole approached her in the library. She looked tired and upset. "Karen, can we talk?" They went out to the back of the library where there were several benches under some old poplar trees. "Is something wrong?" Karen asked. "It's about Dr. Gray." Jennifer looked around to make sure no one was nearby. "I think he's doing something strange with our group." "What do you mean?" "At the last meeting, he offered me a private session. He said he'd noticed signs of repressed trauma. I agreed because I trusted him." Jennifer paused. "He used hypnosis, and I told him things that I now realize never happened." Karen felt her heart race. "Things like what?" "He convinced me that my uncle had molested me when I was 10. Under hypnosis, I even remembered details. But when I got home and really thought about it, Jennifer shook her head. My uncle died when I was 8, and he never did anything inappropriate. But why would Dr. Gray implant false memories? I don't know, but I've decided not to go back to him, and I think you should be careful too." Jennifer took her hand. Robert Stone is right. There's something wrong with Gray. That evening, Karen decided to skip the group meeting. Instead, she went to Robert's mystical shop. The store was closed, but she noticed a light on upstairs and knocked on the door. Robert opened the door, looking surprised. "Karen, is something wrong? Can we talk? You were right about Dr. Gray." He led her upstairs to his apartment above the store. The place was modestly furnished, a sofa, a few armchairs, bookshelves filled with volumes on psychology and spirituality. "Would you like some tea?" he offered. Karen sat down on the sofa and told him about her recent sessions, the strange memories of her father, and her conversation with Jennifer. "He's creating false memories," Robert said, handing her a mug of chamomile tea. "It's called memory implantation. Some therapists do it accidentally, but Gray does it on purpose. But why? Control. If he can convince you that you have a trauma that you don't really have, he becomes the only one who can heal you. You become dependent on him." Robert sat down across from her. "He did the same thing to me. He convinced me that my father was an alcoholic and beat me. For months, I worked through this trauma, paid him money, and considered him my savior. How did you realize the memories were false?" "I found my father's medical records. He never drank. He was allergic to alcohol, and the scars I remembered on my body were never there." Robert took a sip of tea. "When I tried to talk to him about it, he said I had memory problems because of the trauma." "That's awful. But that's just the beginning. Once he's created an addiction, he starts offering more intense treatments." "What kind of treatments?" Robert paused. "Rituals. He calls them healing ceremonies. He says they're based on ancient shamanic practices." Karen felt a chill despite the summer heat. "Did you participate in these rituals?" "Once. That was enough." Robert put down his mug. "We drove out to the woods outside of town. There were about 5 of his patients. He gave us some kind of herbal concoction and said it would help us release our trauma." "And what happened?" "I don't remember much. The potion wasn't just herbs. There was something else in it, something psychoactive. We were in a semi-conscious state for hours. Gray performed some kind of ceremony saying he was exorcising our demons." Robert stood up and walked over to the window. "When I came to, one of the women was crying and saying she didn't remember how she got home. She had strange marks on her hands. Gray said it was part of the healing process." "My God." "After that, I stopped going to see him, but he wouldn't let me go. He called, came to the store, said I was disrupting his healing process. I had to threaten to call the police." Karen sat in silence, trying to process what she had heard. "Do you think he performs these rituals regularly?" "I don't know. But after that incident, several of his patients disappeared from the city. They just left without telling anyone." At that moment, Karen's phone rang. The display showed Dr. Gray's name. "Don't answer it," Robert advised. Karen rejected the call, but a minute later a message arrived. "Karen, you missed your appointment. This could harm your progress. Please call me." "He's checking where you are," Robert said. "It's part of the control." The phone rang again. This time it was her mother. "Mom? Karen, dear, your doctor contacted me. He said you've been missing important sessions and that he's concerned about your mental state." Karen felt anger rising in her chest. "He had no right to call you. He said you're accusing your father of things he never did. Karen, what's going on?" "Mom, it's hard to explain, but this doctor isn't who he says he is. I'm not going to see him anymore. But he said you're in danger if you stop treatment." "Mom, please don't listen to him. I'm fine." After talking to her mother, Karen realized how far Gray was willing to go to maintain control over his patients. "He contacted my mother," she told Robert. "Of course he did. He'll use anyone he can to get you back." "What should I do?" "Avoid him. Don't answer his calls. Don't go anywhere he can find you. And if he suggests any special rituals or ceremonies..." Robert looked at her seriously. "Don't agree to anything." The next day, Karen tried to work at the library as usual, but she felt on edge. Dr. Gray called several times, each time leaving messages saying he was concerned about her condition and that she needed to continue therapy. Around noon, Gray himself walked into the library. Karen felt panic rising. but she forced herself to remain calm. "Karen, I need to talk to you," he said, approaching the desk. "I'm at work, Dr. Gray. This is important. You are interrupting a critical phase of your therapy. This could have serious psychological consequences. I've decided to stop therapy. That decision is not up to the patient, but to the specialist." There was a note of irritation in his voice. "You have serious repressed trauma that requires immediate treatment." "What trauma? The one you implanted in me?" Gray looked surprised. "Someone is turning you against me. Robert Stone? He's a mentally unstable man. I spoke with Jennifer and with my mother. My father never hit me." Denial is a typical reaction to recovered memories. Gray leaned closer. "Karen, you are in danger. If we don't complete the healing process, the repressed trauma could manifest itself in serious mental disorders. Please leave." "I have a proposal." Gray lowered his voice. "Tomorrow evening, I'm conducting a special healing ceremony for a small group of patients. It will be your last chance to heal completely from your trauma." "No." "Think about it. The ceremony will be in the woods outside of town, at a place of power. I use ancient techniques that have helped thousands of people." Gray placed a piece of paper with the address on the counter. "If you change your mind, come tomorrow at 8 in the evening. But remember, this is your last chance." He left, leaving Karen trembling with anger and fear. She picked up the piece of paper and saw the address somewhere in the mountains beyond Pueblo. That evening, she went back to Robert and told him about Gray's visit. "A ceremony in the woods," Robert repeated grimly. "That's how it always starts. Do you think there will be other people there? Possibly. Or maybe he's trying to lure you there alone." Robert took out a map of the city. "Show me the address." Karen pointed it out and Robert frowned. "That's a very remote place. If something goes wrong, I'm not going there." "All right, but I think we should contact the police." "And what are we going to tell them? That the doctor invited me to a ceremony?" "No, but we can tell them about his methods, about the false memories." Karen hesitated. "What if he's right? What if I really did suppress some trauma?" "Karen, listen to yourself. You know your father. You know your childhood. Don't let him make you doubt your own memory." That night, Karen hardly slept. Part of her was curious about what the ceremony would be like, but most of her felt that Robert was right. Something was very wrong with Dr. Gray and his methods. By morning, her resolve was firm. She would not go to the ceremony. But around noon, Rebecca called from the group. "Karen, are you going to the ceremony today?" "No. Are you?" "Yes, of course. Dr. Gray said it would help me get rid of my anxiety for good. There will be a special healing ritual." "Rebecca, I don't think you should go." "Why? Dr. Gray knows what he's doing. He's helped me so much already." Karen tried to convince her, but Rebecca wouldn't listen. After the conversation, Karen realized she couldn't just sit at home knowing that Rebecca and possibly other people were going to a potentially dangerous place. She called Robert. "We have to go there," she said. "Not to attend the ceremony, but to make sure everyone is okay. It could be dangerous. Rebecca is going there. I can't just abandon her." Robert sighed. "All right, but we're going together and we're staying out of the way. If anything goes wrong, call the police immediately." The sun was already setting behind the mountains when Karen and Robert reached the location indicated in the note. A dirt road led into a dense forest about 20 miles west of Pueblo. The air was cooler than in the city, but still muggy from the day's heat. "Stop here," Robert said when they saw several cars parked among the trees. "Let's walk." They left Karen's car on the side of the road about a quarter of a mile from the rendezvous point and followed a trail through the pine forest. Robert carried a small flashlight, but didn't turn it on yet. There was still enough twilight in the forest. "Do you hear that?" Karen whispered. Faint sounds came from deep in the woods. Human voices, perhaps singing or humming. They moved cautiously toward the sounds, trying not to step on dry branches. After a few minutes, they saw the flickering of a fire between the trees. Robert motioned for Karen to stop, and they hid behind a large fallen pine trunk. A small clearing surrounded by tall pine trees opened up before them. In the center was a bonfire, around which 6 people dressed in white were sitting. Karen recognized Rebecca, Jennifer, and several other members of the group. The 7th person stood by the fire with his back to them, Dr. Gray in a long, dark robe. "Tonight you will be freed from all trauma, all pain, all limitations," Gray said in a voice that carried across the clearing. "The ancient knowledge I have studied for years will allow you to be reborn." On the ground next to the fire were several clay bowls and some objects that Karen couldn't make out in the flickering light of the flames. "First, you must purify yourselves," Gray continued, lifting one of the bowls. "This elixir will open your minds to healing." "We have to stop this," Karen whispered. "Wait," Robert said. "We don't see anything really dangerous yet. If we intervene now, he'll just say he's conducting a normal therapy session." Gray passed the bowl around the circle. Each participant took a sip and passed it on. Karen noticed that some of them began to sway from side to side. "Now clear your minds," Gray said. "Allow the ancient wisdom to enter you." He began to chant something in a language Karen didn't recognize. The participants joined in, although it was clear they didn't understand the words. Their movements became more coordinated, as if they were under the influence of something stronger than ordinary suggestion. "What did he give them?" Karen whispered. "Something psychoactive, maybe psilocybin or ayahuasca. In small doses, it's not lethal, but it makes people very suggestible." Gray pulled a knife with a long, curved blade from his robe. In the light of the fire, the metal glinted ominously. "Now each of you must make a sacrifice," he announced. "Blood is the link between the physical and spiritual worlds." Robert tensed. "Now this is getting dangerous." Gray approached Rebecca, who sat with her eyes closed, swaying to the rhythm of the chant. "Hold out your hand, child." Rebecca obediently held out her left hand. Gray took her wrist and quickly ran a blade across her palm. Rebecca didn't even cry out, only moaned softly. "Now let your blood nourish the earth," Gray said, guiding her hand so that the blood dripped onto the ground near the fire. "We have to do something," Karen whispered. "One more minute," Robert replied, already taking out his phone. "Now we have proof." Gray moved from one participant to another, repeating the same ritual. They were all clearly under the influence of drugs and obediently held out their hands to the knife. When he reached Jennifer, Karen couldn't take it anymore. "Jennifer!" she cried, jumping out from behind the tree trunk. Everyone in the clearing turned toward her. Gray looked surprised but not frightened. "Karen," he said calmly, "I knew you would come. Your subconscious knows you need healing." "Let them go," Karen demanded, stepping into the clearing. "You've drugged them. I'm helping them see the truth." Gray still held the knife, but he lowered it. "You can join us too. This is your last chance for real healing." Robert appeared next to Karen, holding his phone. "I've already called the police. The game is over, Gray." "Robert," Gray shook his head, "you've always been too weak for real transformation." The ceremony participants looked at them with misty eyes. Some continued to hum quietly. Others simply swayed. Blood continued to ooze from their palms. "What did you give them?" Karen asked. "An ancient elixir of wisdom, a combination of plants that shamans have used for centuries." Gray smiled. "Nothing illegal, if that's what you're thinking." They all gave their consent to alternative therapy. Consent obtained through manipulation. "You don't understand the depth of human suffering, Karen. These people came to me broken, traumatized. Traditional psychology couldn't help them." Karen moved closer to Rebecca, trying to get her attention. "Rebecca, can you hear me?" The girl slowly turned her head, but her gaze was empty. "Karen, did you come here for healing too?" "We're leaving here, all of us." "But the ceremony isn't over yet," said Gray. "The most important part is yet to come." "What part?" Robert asked. "The final transformation, the death of the old self and the birth of the new." Gray raised the knife. "One of the participants must make the ultimate sacrifice so that the rest can be reborn." Karen felt her blood run cold. "You're talking about murder. I'm talking about liberation, about transitioning from one state of being to another." Gray began to slowly circle the bonfire. "Ancient cultures understood that true transformation requires sacrifice. The death of one gives life to many. You're crazy, Robert said, backing toward the edge of the clearing. Crazy? Gray laughed. I've spent 20 years studying the human psyche. I've seen people suffer from their limitations, from their fears, from their inability to accept the truth about themselves. He stopped next to Jennifer, who was sitting with her eyes half closed. Jennifer is ready for transformation, he said. Her suffering will soon be over. Don't touch her! Karen lunged toward them, but Gray was faster. He grabbed Jennifer by the hair and held the knife to her throat. One step, and she'll die a painful death instead of a liberating one. Robert tried to get around him, but Gray noticed the movement. Robert, you've always been a coward. That's why you couldn't finish your therapy. Let her go, Karen begged. Take me instead. Gray looked at her intently. Interesting. Are you willing to sacrifice yourself for others? That's a sign of true evolution of consciousness. Yes, but let the others go. Karen, no, whispered Robert. Gray let go of Jennifer, who fell limply to the ground. Come to me, Karen. Karen slowly approached the fire. The heat of the flames burned her face, and the smoke stung her eyes. Do you understand what's happening? Gray asked. You're killing innocent people under the guise of therapy. I'm freeing them from the illusion of life. Death is not the end, but a transition. He raised the knife, and the blade reflected the light of the fire. Your death will give them an understanding of the true nature of existence. They're under the influence of drugs. They don't understand what's happening. Their minds have been cleansed of lies and prejudice. Now they see reality. Gray grabbed Karen's arm. His fingers were cold and strong. Do you have any last words? Yes, Karen said, looking him in the eyes. You're not a doctor. You're just a sick man who uses other people's pain for your twisted fantasies. Gray froze for a moment, and Karen saw a flash of rage in his eyes. You don't understand the depth of my work, he hissed. At that moment, sirens could be heard coming from the forest. Police cars were approaching on the dirt road. It's too late, Gray said. The ceremony must be completed. He raised the knife, aiming for Karen's heart. But at the last moment, she dodged, and the blade sliced across her ribs, leaving a deep wound. Karen fell, feeling warm blood flowing down her side. Gray raised the knife for a second blow, but Robert lunged at him from behind. They fell, rolling on the ground near the bonfire. The knife flew away. Robert was younger and stronger, but Gray fought with the desperation of a cornered animal. Karen tried to get up, but the wound was deeper than she thought. The blood flowed faster and faster, and she felt her strength leaving her. Robert, she croaked. Robert looked back, and that moment was enough for Gray to reach the knife. He grabbed it and plunged it into Robert's back with all his strength. Robert screamed and fell face down. Gray stood up, covered in blood and dirt. The knife was still in his hand. Now no one can stop the ceremony, he said, approaching Karen as she lay on the ground. The sound of sirens grew louder. Flashlights flickered between the trees. Police, everyone stay where you are. Gray stood over Karen, looking down at her. You could have been part of something great, he said, but you chose to resist. He raised the knife one last time. Karen closed her eyes, feeling the life slowly drain from her with the first wound. She thought of her parents, of Denver, of all the things she wanted to do differently. The blow came quickly and precisely. The blade entered between her ribs, piercing her heart. Karen felt a sharp pain, which was immediately replaced by a strange calm. The last thing she saw were the stars through the smoke of the bonfire. The last thing she heard were the cries of the police and the sound of running feet. Dr. Marcus Gray stood over Karen Bell's body as the police rushed into the clearing. The knife was still in his hand, and his white coat was stained with blood. Hands up! Drop your weapon! Gray slowly raised his hands, but did not let go of the knife. The ceremony is over, he said calmly. She is free. One of the police officers fired a stun gun. Gray shuddered and fell next to the bonfire. Other officers rushed to the wounded. Robert was still alive, though in critical condition. The participants in the ceremony sat in shock, not understanding what had happened. But Karen Bell was dead. Her eyes were open, staring at the night sky, and blood was slowly soaking into the ground around the dying fire. Detective Sarah Mitchell arrived at the crime scene an hour after Gray's arrest. She examined the bodies, interviewed witnesses, and tried to understand what had happened in the woods. "Is this some kind of ritual cult?" she asked Sergeant Thompson. "Looks like it. The prime suspect is a local psychologist named Marcus Gray. He says he was conducting a therapy session." Mitchell looked at the young woman's body next to the bonfire. "A therapy session with a knife? He's clearly insane, but we'll have to figure out what really happened here." Mitchell nodded, looking at the flickering remains of the fire. She knew this case would be difficult, and that Karen Bell's family deserved answers. Detective Sarah Mitchell spent a sleepless night examining the crime scene and interviewing witnesses. By morning, she had a preliminary picture of what had happened, but many questions remained unanswered. She was most concerned by the statements of the participants in the ceremony. All of them had been under the influence of an unknown substance and had little memory of the events. At 8 in the morning, she headed to the hospital to visit Robert Stone. The doctors said he would survive, although the knife had damaged his lung and he had lost a lot of blood. "Mr. Stone," she said as she entered the room. "I'm Detective Mitchell. Can we talk?" Robert looked pale but was alert. "How's Karen?" Mitchell paused. "I'm very sorry. Miss Bell didn't survive." Robert closed his eyes and turned away toward the window. "I should have stopped her. I shouldn't have gone there. Tell me what happened." For the next hour, Robert recounted in detail about Dr. Gray, his methods, the false memories, and the previous rituals. Mitchell wrote down every word. "Has he killed before?" she asked. "I don't know for sure, but one of his patients in Denver committed suicide, and several people disappeared after they stopped seeing him." "Do you have any names?" "Some. I tried to track some of them down, but..." Robert winced painfully. "I'll give you what I know, After talking to Robert, Mitchell went to the jail to question Marcus Gray. He was sitting in his holding cell, calm and collected, as if nothing had happened. "Dr. Gray," Mitchell said, sitting down across from him in the interrogation room, "you are charged with the first-degree murder of Karen Bell." "This is a regrettable misunderstanding," Gray replied. "I was conducting a therapy session. Karen was suffering from serious psychological problems." "A therapy session with a knife?" "Ritual practices have been used by healers for thousands of years. Modern medicine is too limited in its approaches." Mitchell studied his face. Gray looked completely confident in his innocence, without a hint of remorse or doubt. "You killed Karen Bell." "I freed her from her suffering. Her mind was blocked by childhood traumas she refused to acknowledge." "What traumas?" "We spoke to her parents. There were no traumas." Families often hide the truth, or they don't realize it. Gray leaned forward. "Detective, you don't understand the depths of the human psyche. What happened last night was an act of mercy." "Stabbing a 23-year-old woman in the heart was an act of mercy?" "Death is not the end. It is a transition to a higher state of being." Mitchell realized that it was useless to try to reason with Gray. He was either truly mentally ill or so convinced of his own righteousness that he had lost touch with reality. "Tell me about Denver," she said. "About the patient who committed suicide." For the first time, Gray's expression changed slightly. "Lisa Thornton was a very difficult case. She wasn't ready for deep work." "What happened to her?" "She couldn't accept the truth about her repressed memories. Instead of healing, she chose escape." "You mean suicide?" "She wasn't strong enough for transformation." Mitchell took notes. "What about the other patients? The ones who disappeared after stopping therapy?" "Many people aren't ready for real change. They prefer to run from the truth." "Or you killed them." "I didn't kill anyone until last night, and what happened to Karen was necessary to complete the healing ritual." After the interrogation, Mitchell contacted the Denver police. Detective James Riley, who had investigated the Lisa Thornton case, agreed to come to Pueblo the next day. Meanwhile, she received the results of the analysis of the substance Gray had given to the ceremony participants. It was a combination of psilocybin mushrooms, datura, and several other psychoactive plants. The dose was high enough to cause severe hallucinations and make people extremely suggestible. He basically turned them into zombies, said the forensic scientist. In that state, they would have done anything he told them to. Later that evening, a woman in her 50s with tear-stained eyes came to Mitchell's office. "I'm Linda Bell," she said, "Karen's mother." Mitchell invited her to sit down. "Mrs. Bell, please accept my condolences. I know how difficult this must be. Tell me what happened to my daughter. All I know is that she was murdered." Mitchell cautiously recounted the events in the woods, omitting the most gruesome details. Linda listened silently, occasionally wiping away tears. "She was such a smart girl," Linda said, "always helping others. Why did she get involved with that man?" "Your daughter was going through a difficult period after breaking up with her fiancé. Gray took advantage of her vulnerability. He called me. He said Karen was accusing her father of something he never did. Now I realize he was lying." Gray specialized in creating false memories. It's part of his method of controlling his patients. Linda paused. "Did Karen try to stop him?" "Yes, she didn't go there to participate in the ritual. She went to help other people. Your daughter was very brave. What will happen to him? We'll do everything we can to get him a life sentence, but we need to build a strong case." The next day, Detective Riley arrived from Denver. He brought a thick file on Dr. Gray. "Lisa Thornton wasn't the only one," he said, laying out photos on the table. In his 5 years in Denver, he had at least 3 patients who committed suicide and several others who simply disappeared. "Did you suspect him of murder?" "We suspected, but we couldn't prove anything. He was very careful. Officially, it all looked like therapy sessions. The victims' relatives didn't know about his methods." Riley showed a photo of a young man. David Harris, 28 years old. He committed suicide 3 months after starting therapy with Gray. He left a note apologizing for not being able to bear the truth about himself. Did Gray implant false memories in him? Probably. The family said David started saying strange things about his childhood that never happened. They studied case after case. The pattern was the same. Gray found vulnerable people, created false memories of trauma, made them dependent on his therapy, and then subjected them to increasingly extreme treatments. "What about the missing people?" Mitchell asked. 4 people? All of them stopped therapy with Gray and then disappeared. Officially, they're listed as missing. Riley showed her a map of the Denver area. "We've searched this area twice and found nothing. Maybe he buried the bodies in different places. Or maybe they really did just leave. Possible. But there are too many coincidences." By the end of the day, Mitchell had enough evidence to charge Gray with first-degree murder. But she wanted more information about his methods and possible other victims. That evening, she returned to the hospital to see Robert. His condition had improved, and he was able to talk longer. "Tell me more about the rituals," she asked. "I only participated in one, but I heard about others. Gray used different locations, sometimes in the woods, sometimes in abandoned buildings, always somewhere isolated. What happened during the rituals?" "First, he gave everyone psychoactive substances. He said they were ancient plants of power. Then he would start chanting and make people do strange things." "What kind of things?" Robert paused. "Undressing, cutting themselves, sometimes intimate things with each other, all under the pretext of breaking taboos." "Did he photograph or film it?" "Possibly. I don't remember exactly. I was under the influence of drugs. But I remember flashes of light." Mitchell realized that Gray could have used such recordings to blackmail his patients. This explained why some continued to see him even after they realized something was wrong. The next day, she obtained a search warrant for Gray's home and office. In his office, they found carefully organized files on all of his patients, including detailed records of hypnosis sessions and personal information that could be used for manipulation. But the most important discovery was in the basement of Gray's home. There, they found a small room with video equipment and hundreds of recordings of various therapy sessions. Many of them showed people in an obviously altered state of consciousness performing humiliating acts. "This is how he controlled them," said the criminal investigator looking through the recordings. "If someone tried to leave, he could threaten to show them these videos." Mitchell also found a journal in which Gray had made notes about his experiments. The entries were written in scientific language but described horrific manipulation of people. Subject number 47, Karen B., shows high susceptibility to suggestion. Mitchell read, "Memories of childhood trauma successfully implanted, ready for final stage of transformation." At the end of the journal was an entry dated the day of the murders. "Today I will perform the final ritual. Karen B. will be the catalyst for the transformation of the entire group. Her sacrifice will reveal the true nature of existence to the others." This evidence was more than enough for an indictment, but Mitchell wanted to understand Gray's motives. She scheduled another interrogation. "Dr. Gray, we found your journal. You planned to kill Karen Bell. I planned her liberation. She was ready for the final transformation. You killed her for your twisted fantasies. You don't understand the depth of my work." Gray looked calm, almost peaceful. "Years of studying the human mind have shown me that most people live in a fantasy. They are afraid of the truth about themselves." "What truth?" "That they are nothing, that their lives are meaningless, that the only way to find meaning is to sacrifice themselves to something greater." "And you decided you had the right to decide who should die?" "I didn't decide. I simply guided them toward the truth. Those who were ready accepted the transformation. Those who weren't." Gray shrugged. "Do you regret killing Karen?" "Regret is an emotion for the weak. I did what was necessary." Mitchell realized that Gray was a sociopath who used his knowledge of psychology to manipulate and control others. His spiritual beliefs were just a way to justify his actions. Marcus Gray's trial began 3 months later. Mitchell testified about the investigation. Robert talked about his experience, and Karen's parents spoke about what their daughter was like. Survivors of the ceremony also testified, although many of them were still undergoing therapy to recover from their trauma. "I don't remember much from that night," Rebecca said in court. "But I remember Karen trying to save us. She could have left, but she stayed for us." The defense tried to prove that Gray was insane, but a psychiatric evaluation showed that he was fully aware of the nature of his actions. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict was unanimous: guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Marcus Gray to life in prison without the possibility of parole. "Your actions," the judge said, "represent one of the most egregious abuses of trust this court has ever seen. You used your position as a psychologist to manipulate vulnerable people and ultimately killed an innocent young woman." Gray listened to the sentence without emotion. As he was led away in handcuffs, he turned to the courtroom. "The truth does not die," he said. "One day, everyone will understand." After the trial, Mitchell met with Karen's parents. "It won't bring our daughter back," said Linda Bell, "but at least he can't hurt anyone else now." "Your daughter saved other people's lives," Mitchell said. "If she hadn't gone there that night, Gray could have killed even more people." A year after the trial, Mitchell received a letter from Robert Stone. He had moved to another state but continued to help victims of psychological manipulation. In his letter, he wrote, "Karen was the bravest person I ever knew. She sacrificed herself to protect others. Every day I think about what I could have done to save her, but I know she would want us to continue helping people who find themselves in similar situations." Marcus Gray is serving a life sentence in a maximum security prison in Colorado. He still considers himself a misunderstood genius and refuses to admit his guilt. But thanks to Karen Bell's bravery and Detective Mitchell's work, he will never be able to harm innocent people again. Karen's story is a reminder that evil can hide behind a mask of helpfulness, and that sometimes the most ordinary people are capable of extraordinary courage in the face of danger.